Building relationships is the way Mutual of Omaha has grown into one of the leading financial services companies in the world. Our reverse mortgage wholesale division is proud to carry on this 100-plus year tradition. To your borrowers, a reverse mortgage is more than a transaction. It's a promise of a better, more stress-free life. Our goal is to provide you, our valued client, with the best service and support possible so you can focus on helping your borrowers achieve the retirement of their dreams.
So is there just broad brushstrokes here, is there a basic checklist of some of the questions a reverse mortgage professional could ask a homeowner to at least get a better grasp of their present situation and maybe some of the pitfalls that could lie ahead?
Broad brushstrokes. There's a million details we could get into. I think the key is to have a formula or a process. I can show you some of the main things that I'm shocked people don't ask is, what assets do you have beyond Social Security? People tend to just try and find enough income to justify residual income. People don't ask about assets, retirement versus non-retirement. I'll share one little thing we used to use in our planning practice. We had an acronym called FORM, F-O-R-M, and it was sort of a framework that we used for asking questions. So the F stood for family. So help me understand your family. Do you have kids? Do you have grandkids? Talk a little bit about that. And people love to talk about their family. So it's a nice, easy, open way to initiate a conversation. And you can get into, now you understand if they have kids, 2, 3, or 4, are they local? Are they not local? Mm-hmm. And as you're asking these questions, you're also sourcing need and potential risk that they may not even know that they have. I used to ask all the time about just the financial stability of their kids, the health of their kids. So if as parents or the person you're talking to, they've got some financial stuff they're dealing with, are the kids going to be there to support them? Can they support them financially? Are they local there? Can they show up and help them if there's a need? What's the in-home care situation going to look like down the road? So that family becomes the context. And then how well do the kids get along? I just love that to ask the question. This is a great question to go direct to somebody is, hey, do you have brothers and sisters? Yes or no? Oh, yeah, I got a brother, sister. How often do you guys make joint financial decisions? For most people, never, right? So when's the first time you're probably going to have to make a joint financial decision with your siblings? And you just, oh, shoot, it's when something happens to mom or dad. Absolutely. Is that a good time to test the market and see how that's going to go? Well, no, it's not. So now you've created this whole other form of risk, which is how are we communicating with your kids? What's going to happen when they hear about this? What's going to happen if something happens to you and they have to sort it out? Are we creating an environment where these kids are going to dislike each other and fight over the decisions that were made? Is one kid involved and the other one not? So you start, again, raising these flags and these opportunities to help in a bigger, more meaningful way. So on the FORM acronym, O is your occupation. What'd you do for a living? Are you working still or are you retired? In this case, most people will be retired, but people love to talk about what they did back when they did work. And that's really, in this environment, a conversation starter, a rapport builder, and you can learn about the way they think. And now as you, again, start presenting things, am I, presenting things like waffles or am I presenting things like spaghetti, right? People have different ways that their brains work. Do I need to show them the big picture or do I need to get in the weeds and go granular on the nuts and bolts of how this works? And that's really a way they think. So sometimes a little bit about their occupation can lead to understanding of that. R is relationships, which I focused a lot on other professionals that you work with. Who are the other people in your life that help you make these types of decisions? And this is important because you want to know if there's somebody in the background chirping in their ear saying this thing is terrible. That probably knows nothing about it, by the way. And so you need to be able to hear that, see that, know that so that you can cut it off or support it if needed. And so do they have advisors, attorneys, CPAs, somebody at church they listen to, whomever it might be. You want to know who the people are that they have relationships around that participate in their decision making. And then finally, the last one, M, is your money, right? What do you have? What have you set aside? What do you have access to? If something goes sideways, what's that going to look like? What are the resources that you have available to you? So that's, one example. We could probably come up with 5 more if you and I put our brains together and came up with them. But, there was companies I work for had the 4 quadrants you ask. And so there's a lot of ways. Financial assessment is a good start. Like there's things in the financial assessment that you can use. It's a little light, but there, that starts creating a framework for how do you just ask good questions. And at the end of it, the advice I always give to people is be curious. And don't just be curious. I would say be insatiably curious. Be insatiably curious. Want to understand. Just seek understanding about these people, their lives, what matters to them, because this is probably one of the more significant decisions they're having to make. And you have to recognize and honor that. And you've got to understand what they're feeling emotionally about this decision, because it's probably feeling very counterintuitive to them on the front end. So there's the fact finding on the math, so you can validate that this does make sense for them. And there's really the fact finding on where are they emotionally around this entire decision, because that's going to drive it at the end of the day. And you got to know what are the fears and triggers that they're trying to either avoid or, chase, whatever it might be. How do you identify those in that process? And that requires, in my mind, curiosity to understand them as a person, as a human. It's been through life, had adventures, had ups and downs, and learned stuff, is now trying to solve this next thing in their lives.
So form, family, occupation, relationships, who are you working with? That helps you make decisions. And then money. And that works for us. I like the simple acronym. Even I can understand it. And then when it comes to money, you made a very good point. Not just asking for sources of income, Social Security, pension, 401k, distributions, IRAs, etc., but assets, because those assets can also become a form of income potentially. So we want to ask general questions. Now, most of the time you wouldn't get into the weeds about how much is your natural gas bill and your electricity bill, right? You just get a general idea of household expenses. Is that correct?
Well, I think in the financial assessment, I think there's a lot of loan officers that really get into the weeds on breaking down all of those individual expenses. And I think that's great. In our role, we're mostly working with advisors, so we tend to stay a little more ballpark, top of the trees, if you want to say, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But I know there's a lot of great loan officers that do really get into the weeds. What's your cell phone bill? What's your utility bill? And I think if you're comfortable doing that, it's great, because you really want to uncover as much detail as possible.
Yep.
Because that again comes back to where is the gap? Where really are they financially? And the scary part is, we start asking those questions. Most of us don't know all of those details.
Right.
So some might, if they're on a very strict fixed income, they may know exactly what that is. So I see no harm in asking those questions. As long as you're not being intrusive, which I don't even know if that's possible.
Right.
I think there's value in going deep, asking questions, but you have to sort of frame up with people why you're asking. In some sense, you have to earn the right. Like there is a reality of, you call and start asking somebody the balance in their retirement account. If you haven't earned the right to ask that question, then that's going to be a barrier. And so there is a trust building that's required, and you have to be able to effectively frame up what you're trying to accomplish here. And for me, I always frame that up. This is a conversation not to tell you about reverse mortgage. This is a conversation to understand your situation and try and help determine, is this even the right thing for you? And in order to know, is this the right thing for you, then I just have to understand the big picture of what you have going on. Until we know that, who cares if it's a fixed loan, a variable loan, expected rate and interest rate and mortgage insurance premium and line of credit growth? None of that matters if this isn't the right thing for them. So you have to start with my first objective of, is there a scenario where this could be helpful to you? And you have to ask questions to know that.
And that sets the stage so well. And that's the approach I took, sitting at the kitchen table when I was originating is, we're going to have some questions to determine if this is even the right fit. We don't know yet. And that not only, it didn't make them nervous, it built your credibility. So I think that should put people to ease. And a good point about the financial assessment, yes, it gets into the weeds on utilities and other expenses, but that can be a great springboard also in the fact finding. I know you're not doing the financial assessment on your first appointment, but it can be a good template and a good, predicate to go into those details.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to positioning and expectations. People, the one nice thing about lending is you can ask a lot of questions because they're coming to you for money in most cases, right? So they'll tend to reveal a lot. But I always I view a lot of it as positioning and how you position yourself as a professional. And how do you set expectations? You need to ask permission to ask those questions. It's simple things. If hey, I want to ask you some questions so I can better understand your financial situation. Some of these may seem like they do or don't apply, but just understand this comes with a lot of experience. And are you open to my asking some questions to you? So, getting permission, they'll rarely say no, but ask those questions and get to understand it and know why you're asking.
Have you seen, just in closing, have you seen traditional or reverse mortgage professionals successfully fact find? And if so, what's your impression of these individuals?
I think anytime you find somebody that's good at what they do, it's impressive. And again, this will sound bad. I know I sometimes offend people, but it seems to be more the exception than the norm from what I've seen in this industry. And I think that's a problem. Actually, it was funny. I was on a flight this morning and I wrote an article, which is why don't advisors send you clients? And it really came down to your professionalism. And I've got a whole series of things as to why, but it stemmed from an early conversation I had with an advisor that had met people in the reverse industry and wouldn't put them in front of a client. And so why is that? And I think it's one thing to know professionals that are good at it, but it's also what's the perception? Like my perception of are they good or bad is kind of irrelevant. Like who cares? Yeah, this loan officer is awesome. So if I have an opportunity, maybe I'll send it to them because I think they do a good job. More importantly, what's that client's perception for those that ask good questions? So maybe what's more important is what's their impression? What's the impression of the advisor as they're sitting down and hearing you fact find or question their client? Because a good loan officer is going to really do a joint call with an advisor. And in doing so, that advisor in about the first 45 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, is going to quickly determine or judge you and your ability to know, are you there to serve their client or are there to serve yourself and sell a thing? And they're going to quickly figure that out by the number and detail of the questions you're asking and why you're asking them. And if you just come in to sell a thing, it's going to be very uncomfortable for them and it's going to be a short-lived relationship. So the best loan officers are skilled at this. They're natural at it. You don't need to follow a script. Like I said, just be curious, right? Ask questions, understand them, and then know that the answers that you get should be able to inform how you position the solution that you have.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much again for returning to the Industry Leader Update. And I really feel that this is going to be helpful for many of our viewers who maybe have been a little reluctant to do financial fact finding or who have done so but maybe want to even up their game a little bit further. So thank you very much. And if I understand correctly, the Equity Wealth Academy can help in that process. Is that correct?
That is true. We are here to help people grow. It's interesting. We were just talking this last week around one of the big differences of our world versus where the reverse industry's been. The reverse industry for years have been trying to push people over to the advisor space. And I guess what we've realized is different about us. We are in the advisor space. We've lived here. And so this academy is how do we pull you over to this new island, right? How do we pull you here and teach you the customs and the languages of Advisor Island? We should trademark that. But so what does that look like? And so that's a big one of our drives that we're doing with the Academy is how do we help people ask better questions? How do we increase the quality of the industry? Because our game is really the financial services space. We're in the business to change that industry. How do we change the financial services industry? But in order for us to be able to pull that off, to make this a legitimate retirement solution, we need the reverse industry and the loan officers in the space to be along with us. Because I can't talk to advisors that turn around and say, I've met loan officers and I'm not putting one of them in front of my clients. Like that is heartbreaking. So we need to be able to say, don't sweat it. We've done the work. We have a pool of qualified people that we can connect you with that will serve your clients with the same level of compassion and professionalism that you have. So remove that objection from the table. And that's a lot of what we're trying to solve. And it's been an amazing, interesting journey in the process.
Well, thank you again. And to all of our viewers, we want to be just insatiably curious about our clients and their situation. Good advice, Ryan. And for those of you watching that has questions, go ahead and leave those in the comment section, and we'll be sure to get those to Ryan. And be sure to thank our sponsor, Mutual of Omaha Mortgage, by clicking on the banner on this page. Please share this video on LinkedIn. I know that many of you are active on the LinkedIn profile, and let others know how they can improve their fact-finding game as a reverse mortgage professional. We do have a YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe there. And each and every week, we curate the most recent and relevant reverse mortgage news, which you can find on HECM World Weekly, the nation's only weekly podcast, by the way, bringing you reverse mortgage news. So thanks again for watching, and be sure to return next week for more reverse mortgage news, commentary, and analysis you'll only find here at HECM World.